The Pulse of Spokane is a broad show that showcases many different things in our community, sponsored by Local 29 Firefighters Union, Well Dressed Walrus, and Homes for You. Well, welcome to the Pulse of Spokane. Kent Adams here, and once in a while I get to have some really great leaders in town on this program, and I have one today, Craig Meidl, who is our police chief. Craig, thank you for coming, number one. I know your schedule has been insane. Does that cover it?
That's a pretty good descriptor.
Yeah.
Yes, it has.
You know, I'm going to say it right up front. We are so lucky in Spokane, both in the county with Ozzie and you in the city, to have such positive, caring leadership.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And that really means a lot. I think back to my moving up here with my wife and two of our eventually 4 kids from Los Angeles 44 years ago almost, okay? And I think of the issues that are down there. One of the reasons to move here was because of family and all the good things that are going on. Although I'll have to tell you, at the time, it was Sherry's and Perkins were the only Saturday choices for breakfast. But I mean, you know, things have improved since then.
Yeah.
But the strength and caring that you and Ozzie and your men and women in uniform here in town has been such a great thing. And it really makes a difference. Yes, some things go wrong once in a while. They go wrong here. I mean, welcome to life.
Right.
You know, bad things happen, and so forth. So I have no notes, as you know. I just want to talk about what's going on. And let's go back to, I think it was May 31st, when there was going to be a Black Lives Matter demonstration and protest. I think it started out certainly as a protest, but then we know it kind of downgraded from there.
Yeah.
Not from the group that was advocating the protest part, really, right?
Right.
Fill us in and give us some backstory now that you've had a time to look back a little bit.
Yeah. So, you know, before that event, May 31st, you know, we'd received a little bit of information, open source information, that there may have been a few individuals that were going to come down and try to hijack that.
Right.
But, you know, as we were talking before we went on the air, you know, this is Spokane. I've worked here for 26 years. And although we knew we'd seen riots in some of these other cities, I was very Pollyannic. I was like, this is Spokane.
Yeah.
You know, our community, we don't riot. You know, we may have frustrations and disagreements, but Spokane is not one of those cities that will riot. So I started the day at the briefing, just looking at what our ops plan was, how we were going to deploy. And I'm just thinking, you know, this will be, you know, an afternoon of folks being able to talk about their frustrations, their angst and anger and everything else. And then after, you know, 4 or 5 hours, everyone will go home. And then about half an hour before the actual rally started, we started to see groups of people bringing in gallons of milk and water. Well, we know from other cities, they will typically bring that in as a decontaminant, so they can remove
tear
it.
gas.
For tear gas, yeah.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, well, we've never, I think in my 26 years, we've only once had to use a small amount of tear gas, and that was years and years ago, a weekend night with a bar fight that spilled out into the streets, you know, hundreds of people, and that was almost nothing. That was a blip years and years ago.
Sure.
So when I'm starting to see some of these folks pre-staging milk and water bottles, I'm thinking, okay, this is not necessarily something we've ever seen.
Put the Pollyanna hat on the shelf.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the you know, the speakers, after the speakers got done speaking, they marched down to the public safety campus,
right.
You know, where they continued, and some of the group broke away and started to really confront the officers. And our officers were dressed down. We didn't show up in riot gear. We thought, we're going to show up in our normal uniforms because this is Spokane. And based on the vibe we started to get from this group that kind of separated from the rest of the marchers, we started to really get a feel that this is probably going to be different. So after the group had marched to the public safety campus, they finished speaking for a couple hours, and then a group of about 400 or so then started marching through downtown for about an hour and a half, marching down through the arterials. Got to, at one point, well, let me back up. Our officers were trying to block the streets downtown while they were marching. And
for safety.
For safety, yeah. Absolutely. Well, in the command post, we're getting information from the officers that they're running at the cars. They're trying to throw things at them. So we told them, you need to back away then. I mean, just do what you can to block the traffic a couple blocks away, but you're not going to get that close. We're not going to have cars damaged and officers hurt. So then they get down to the federal courthouse, and we had 2 police cars that had been tagged. At some point right before or during the federal courthouse, we see some graffiti at the courthouse. And that's okay. I mean, it's graffiti. We will wash it off. We don't like it, obviously, but we certainly didn't have enough resources.
That's not life-threatening.
Not life-threatening. Right. Paint can wash off, absolutely. So once they moved down to in front of River Park Square, within a few moments, we started to see some folks break into one of the businesses and starting to loot, starting to steal merchandise from inside the business. And that was our line in the sand. At that point in time, we knew, based on what we saw in other communities, that thing can take off like a wildfire if you don't stop it right then and there.
Right.
So that's the point where we decided we need to get everyone out of the downtown. Now, this has crossed a threshold that we don't want to see it get any worse. So. Yes. Then that was probably around 6:30 at night, I want to say. And then we started to ask for more resources from other jurisdictions. They slowly trickled in. So from about 6:30 to 11:30, we basically just kept trying to push them out of the downtown area. We had officers that had rocks thrown at them, bricks. We had pressure bombs, which is like homemade 2-liter bottles filled with some kind of chemical they toss, and then it'll eventually explode. So a lot of that hasn't really gotten a whole lot of traction in the media yet, but we spent basically 5 hours dealing with all of this until we were finally able to push them out of the downtown around 11:30. It was a very long day for our folks.
Yeah. Well, now you said you didn't have your officers in riot gear. At some point, did they put that on?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I mean, how do you notify them? Just through the radio and so forth?
Yeah, when we set up a command post, we'll have communications with the officers that are out in the field, and based on the, like I said, the vibe, some of our officers were getting surrounded. Once we were able to get them out of the area, then we told them, you need to go get your gear on. And when you see riot gear, think of, the best way to describe it is obviously a helmet to protect the head and a shield. Look at it as big pillowy things that will basically absorb any projectiles that are thrown at you.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. What kind of reaction do you get from your officers for something like this? I mean, what goes through them mentally as well as the physical issues? Because tear gas and other things thrown at them obviously can hurt or cause damage. But mentally, how do you help your officers deal with being hated and targeted? Because that's really what's going on.
Yeah, that is very challenging. I think that the majority of our officers acknowledge that this is a very small group that is down here creating this issue. Again, it was really a fraction of the overall group that showed up that day.
Right.
But then the continuing fallout that seemed to happen for the weeks after, a lot of the stories that were being covered, and you seem to almost feel this anti-police vitriol within the community. And that can have an impact because and I mean this sincerely, our men and women really show up to do a good job. They truly, it sounds cliche-ish, but the majority of the people that we interview will tell us, I want to be police officer because I want to help people.
Yes.
And when you feel like you're not necessarily getting support from the very people you're trying to help, they're human, they're biological creatures, and they're affected by stress just like everyone else. So. One of the things I do have to say that I did was we were inundated with emails and voicemails and cards. We had, cookies and donuts and candy and coffee and all the community. Of
course, donuts.
Donuts. Everybody loves donuts, in fairness. I think I love them more than most. The community really rallied. So I made sure that I sent out every email, voicemail, letter that we got. And I had officers saying, thank you, I needed that.
Yeah.
I had some that said, because we were getting a lot of them. And we had some officers saying, you know what, I delete those. And then those same officers would tell me a week later, you know what, last Thursday, this is a true story, last Thursday, one of the officers said, I really needed that. I opened up the emails you sent because they were feeling down, and they're feeling like maybe the community that they swore to protect had turned against them.
But that wasn't the community that was doing that.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And just being inundated with those emails really helped them feel like the majority of the community really does support us. And we've gotten so many, like I said, so many messages reinforcing that the majority of the community appreciates you, supports you. We have detectives, as an example. They wear plain clothes, but they were feeling the impact as well.
Yes.
And what I told them was, you need to put on your uniform and go out and work the street for a day, because you will have people lining up to thank you and express how much they appreciate what you're doing.
Yes.
And so at every in-service I went to, when there were detectives there, I said, have you guys not been absolutely inundated with people coming up to you out in the street? And they've all said yes.
Good, good. Sometimes we just forget to thank those who, where it lives in their blood and their mind and all of that. I mean, you guys just live it 24/7.
Absolutely.
And we forget to say thank you. So thank you to all that have done that.
Thank you.
We've gone through a couple years of working for a contract with the police union, which was rejected, I think unanimously, if I remember.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. That day, you and your staff put out a fantastic, I thought, press release on what you do in the community, by the way. I think, I don't know if that's out for the public, but it should be, because you really address at least the top part of all you do, because I know you do a lot more. But where are we in that process? What's to happen next? And perhaps I should ask the detective or the policeman on the street this, but I'll ask you, what do they think, having the rank and file think now that it was rejected?
Yeah, it's been 3.5 years since the department has had a contract, and and again, we hire humans, and they're affected, impacted, just like anyone else would be. So when the contract didn't pass, there was understandably a tremendous amount of disappointment. 3.5 years, no contract. I think, though, and again, I can't speak for everyone, because they all have different levels of feelings, but I think it was not only just really no cost of living for 3.5 years. I think at some level, as big, if not a bigger impact for a lot of the officers was a feeling of just feeling like maybe they're not appreciated. It's like we don't deserve a contract after 3.5 years, not from a position of having a pity party or feeling sorry for themselves, but from a position of 3.5 years, all the gun calls are through the roof. The level of defiance that officers are seeing now is through the roof. Our officers showed up through COVID. They did not hesitate to go on calls. And then as we went through the rioting and the protests and a lot of this angst that seems to be directed nationwide at law enforcement, to have a contract
Where's
not
our
pass,
support?
I think that it really to them felt it was a blow to them, and a feeling of maybe not feeling appreciated. And that was as big, I think, as the cost of living.
Yeah. Well, and you look at the cost of living, and that's gone up for everybody, basically, and most employees have been caught up or close to it in the last few years. And those who put their lives on the line, not for 3.5 years, I'm sorry, that I've got a problem with that.
Yeah. So the next step then will be really have the city will meet with the police guild and talk about next steps. There may be more meetings after that. It'll basically be a mediation meeting. There may be more meetings after that, or they may meet and they may decide, let's move on to arbitration. In arbitration, you have to be certified for arbitration, which in arbitration basically means a mediator has met with both groups and said, we're not going to get any further.
Right.
And the mediator has to be the person who says, we're at a stalemate. Then they certify the city and the guild for arbitration. Then an arbitrator is picked, and that could take anywhere from 6 months to 2+ years to finally get a contract resolved. It varies so much.
Yeah.
So it'll be a while.
Oh, great. You would think maybe part of the cost of living could be approved right away, separate from other things.
We talked about that.
I'm trying to be creative here.
Yeah, we talked about that, and in talking with some of the legal advisors, they really felt like that's probably not something that they could do, because it's so tied in with some of the other language in the contract as well.
Yeah. I figured the attorneys know better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Though sometimes we don't like them, right?
Yes.
It's always going to cost money.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't care who wins. The attorneys always win,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Welcome to life these days. What do you see down the road as you look forward to you and your officers and so forth? I've heard things like one of the things that can maybe help is to have more mental health people riding along, and apparently when that's happened, it has worked.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, some of that to me doesn't take a lot of thinking. It should, yes, and I think that's what some on the very far left have said. To the point where defund police, which is a little silly to be talking about, but there are ways to augment and to help. You and your staff are not trained mental health people.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And nor do you want to send them trained mental health personnel in some cases without force there to make sure that everybody's safe.
Yeah, that's absolutely accurate. So right now we do have a joint unit with the sheriff's office stationed out of downtown,
Right.
where we have staff from Frontier Behavioral Health assigned to deputies and police officers. And this is kind of unique. It's a grant we received from the state, and they will go anywhere in the county. So it may be a city police officer with a social worker that goes out to the county, or it may be a deputy with a social worker that goes to a call in the city. And
Are they matched together? Is that what
they
it
are.
is?
They sit in the same car together. They
Okay.
respond to the same calls together.
And work day after day together, pretty much?
yes.
Okay, so they've got a relationship that they can look at the other person and
100%.
you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah,
that, that's important, I think. Yeah.
And once you get to know them, you'll
Yes.
get to see you'll be able to read like, okay, this
Yeah.
person is picking up on something. So
Yep.
we're supportive of that. That's been very effective. I think one of the things though, when we're talking about more of basically of having our social workers ride with law enforcement, which of course we would support, the reality is typically law enforcement will not respond unless a person is in crisis. So we have a lot of mental illness out there. We all know that. The majority of them will never have a police officer respond to a call. But all of the calls we go to, and there are a lot, they're in a crisis mode. And that means that they are not experiencing reality like we are.
Right.
And sometimes that reality is no threat. We see people all the time yelling and screaming at a
Yes.
stop sign,
Yep.
arguing with somebody that the rest of us can't see.
Right.
And while that's not illegal, we also know from stories that sometimes there's just a little switch that this person all of a sudden from yelling at a stop sign now is hearing a voice that says, you are a threat and I need to hurt you.
Yes,
So
yes.
if you're going to send the social workers out, a lot of these calls do require law enforcement to go with them for
Right,
their protection
right.
as well. So,
Yeah.
so there has to be a certain understanding as well that, yes, we could definitely use some more mental services, but we also need to be aware that a lot of the, pretty much most of the time you'll see law enforcement going, they're in a crisis mode and they can trigger that by something that we don't even see or hear.
How many of our council members have done a ride-along?
So we've had, I think a lot of them have done them over the course of 5 or 6 years.
Right, right.
However, we had Councilwoman Wilkerson came out over the weekend.
Okay.
The mayor went out 4 times in the last week.
Wow.
Councilmember Cathcart also went out within the last week as well. So I think those are the 2 council members that have been out recently.
Sure. Yeah. Have you retrained as you need her, the mayor?
Wait a minute, is this being recorded?
It's live.
I will-
she's a friend, so
Yeah,
I say that
she's-
teasingly. But
She's fantastic. She really is. She is a collaborator, and she
Yeah.
wants to collaborate with department heads. She wants to collaborate with the city council. One of the things that I really appreciate about her as well, among the many things, because it's like me, is when I go into the room, I know I'm not the smartest person in the room, so I know I'm going to rely on other people in there who have a lot more knowledge. The only difference is I'm accountable, so I reserve the right to always make the final decision.
Yes,
because
yes.
it's my head on the chopping
I was
block.
going to say, yes. Who do they look to?
Absolutely. You know, and same with the mayor. She will listen, and she really wants to get to know the entire city. She's trying to go out with every department as often as she can. I just worry that she's going to fry herself out because she is everywhere doing everything, but she really wants to get to know how the city operates. I've really appreciated her personality and her style of collaboration. It's been very helpful.
We had her on when we were doing remotes for a couple months, and I remember asking her, is this what you signed up for? I mean, it was just the COVID thing then, you know? I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, welcome to your first 90 or 100 days. And
I thought the same thing. I felt
Yeah.
so bad for her because everything is shut down, all these businesses.
Yeah.
You have all these new requirements of how we will go out in public, including city employees. You have businesses shut. You have an economy that is starting to head towards a recession.
Yeah.
And congratulations, your first 4 months as mayor. I felt so bad for her.
Yeah. All right. So, what's ahead for the department as we look at here we are heading into the middle of July. August will be here before we know it, and then we're back to school, whatever that might look
Right.
like. And it's traditionally the time for the restart. Is when school starts, everything else kind of starts again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question because I truly thought, probably like a lot of other people 2 or 3 months ago, just like the flu, I thought this COVID thing is going to mostly burn out by summer. I didn't think it necessarily disappear, but I thought this thing's
Right,
going to
right,
burn out.
right.
And here we're having record-breaking days in July.
Yeah.
And who knows when this thing is going to start to at least flatline, let alone decrease. So a lot of what we do in our engagement with the community is wrapped around what the requirements are with COVID and the mandates that we're getting from the state. So that really is dictating a lot of our responses. It's dictating a lot of our community engagement. Mm-hmm. So like last year, our Police Activities League, we had over 600 kiddos at 3 different parks throughout the city.
Yes.
And because of COVID now, we can only do it in groups of 10. So that is just the clearest example of currently right now
When
how
they
we
might
change
need
things.
it the most.
Right.
With no school for a while and the
Locked up at
uncertainty.
home, and
Yes.
absolutely. So we'll continue to just work around the parameters with COVID, and we'll continue. The community engagement is so big for us. We'll continue collaborating on, how do we work with more mental health? How do we get ahead of it? It really is a big issue. It's going to require the state to come in ahead of time because by the time we get involved, something's failed. Whether it's the home life, whether it's the treatment, whether any number of things. So we'll continue to work behind the scenes with the legislatures as well as trying to find out how do we get them more help so that we don't have to respond to as many calls.
What can we do as citizens and residents of the city of Spokane to thank our officers?
I appreciate that. I think one of the things that I've really noticed in the last 2 months is, and we all hear that cliche, the silent majority. Everybody hears that. And I believe it's true. There's a silent majority out there that's just not heard because they're busy. They've got a life. They've got kids. They've got a job. They've got hobbies. And so they're living their life, and they're not necessarily looking at what's going on politically. I was the same way.
Yeah.
I think what I've really seen over the last 2 months is that silent majority has really started to speak up.
Yeah.
And if I could say anything to encourage them is what would really help our department is the emails and the voicemails and the letters and the cards, because it does resonate with them.
Okay. I try when I can get the officer's attention and he's not checking my license plate. I'm kidding. To do the up sign.
And that is huge too.
Yeah.
That has really carried us through for the last month is just people lining up to thank us.
Yeah. So sometimes it's the very simple things
Yes.
for the officers that are putting their lives on the line and working long hours and everything that goes with it. Would you please thank your officers on behalf of the citizens of Spokane?
I sure will.
Because they're doing a great job, and we really appreciate it. And just so that no one criticizes us, you came in with a mask, but for
Yes.
TV, I ask you to take it off.
Yes.
Okay, and you'll put it back on as you leave.
I will.
Kind of an example here, right?
That's right.
I just don't want to. I don't want to get all the emails. Why did the police chief? Well,
Right.
because it's TV. And honestly, when I watch some of the news people, especially when they're outside and they got the mask on, I can't understand.
I'm the same
some-
way.
Okay, I thought it was maybe just my age.
I thought it was an age thing too.
Yeah. Well. Okay. Yeah. You kid. You. All right. Craig, thank you very much
Thank you,
for
kids.
all that you and your staff do for this city. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for watching the Pulse of Spokane. Have a good day, everybody.
I'm former Washington State Representative Leonard Christian, and since I left office, the budget has almost doubled, and the governor signed comprehensive K-12 sex education into law. He's also abused his emergency powers. I'm asking for your support to help me return to Olympia so that I can protect businesses and families. I'm Leonard Christian, the reasonable right candidate, and I ask for your vote.
Paid for by Leonard Christian for State Representative, Republican.
National Barricade and Sign Company is a well-established company founded in 1957. National Barricade has become a well-known business in the Spokane Valley for more than 50 years. Over the years, we have built long-lasting relationships with many cities, counties, and their departments of transportation. Customers come to us because they know they are going to get the best quality service at the best possible price. National Barricade prides itself on getting the job done in a timely manner. We know that contractors must have certain items in a timely fashion to get their job done, and if we don't have it, we will get it. We guarantee fast service no matter how long it takes.
Hi, this is Kurt Stockwell with Well Dressed Walrus. We are a local website design and development company here in Spokane. What we do is build beautiful, usable websites for local businesses. A website needs to be beautiful, it needs to be usable for your users, your customers, and yourself. Contact us anytime. We'd love to talk with you about your online marketing.
Thanks for watching. Ask the host a question, recommend a guest, or check out any of our other programs on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SpokaneTalksMedia.com. Sponsored by Local 29 Firefighters Union, Well Dressed Walrus, and Homes for You.